I think we can go in and get started. So I'll go on and
Sure.
start the meeting and call the commission meeting to order for Wednesday, April 7th.
The
And
time is 7:04 p.m.
7:04 p.m. And is somebody doing roll call for us?
Yes.
Would that be
David?
Marcus or Kat?
Yes. Yep. I'll be calling the motions and stuff, and Kat is our scribe tonight because she's great.
Okay. All right, take it away, Marcus, for roll call.
David Hayes,
Here, present.
Alice Novak,
Here.
Gina Paluso,
Here.
Renee Pollock,
Here.
Trent Shepard,
Here.
Kim Smith.
Here.
That is the roll.
Okay, thank you. We definitely have a quorum. Appreciate that. Next item, we have no changes to the agenda, so the next item is approval of previous minutes of the January 6th regular meeting of the commission. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I read them and I didn't find any errors. So
Nor did I.
I'll move that we approve them as submitted.
Second.
Who was the second?
Kim Smith was the second.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion or all set? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. So it's a rare approval of minutes for us without
Yeah, without a comment
Trent
or
finding
a
a typo.
change.
All right, so written communications, I take it we don't have anything?
There are no written communications.
Okay, and do we have an audience?
There's no one but me in this room.
How fun.
And let me just check and make sure that there isn't anybody logged in.
Oh, that's true.
He is the UPTV camera operator, so we have no audience.
Okay. All right, so we have a lot of things that we're not offering tonight, including continued public hearings, old business, new public hearings, new business. Next thing is item number 10, monitoring of historic properties.
So
Does anybody have anything on monitoring?
I just took a ride around and checked out Elm Street and Buena Vista and Halberstadt House, and everything seems to be pretty much the way it was last time we met. I didn't see anything new that looked extraordinarily out of place. Those JSM signs are still on all of the properties that the Baxley sold for rental purposes. But aside from that, I didn't see anything new, at least in that part of town that I noticed that was like earth shattering.
Okay, thank you for your sleuthing.
thank you, I appreciate it.
Let's see, where are we? Staff report already. Marcus.
Okay, and so I guess the first thing I would like to mention on the staff report is we are meeting today. One of the reasons we're meeting, besides bringing you up to date on the status of historic properties and discussing Historic Preservation Month, is also helping fulfill our certified local government requirement to meet 4 times every fiscal year. We met once in January. We did not meet the latter half of last year because there wasn't anything going on that required meeting. And we'll be meeting in May and June as well, which are the last 2 months possible in our fiscal year. So it might be that our next 2 meetings look like this, but we might also be having 1 or 2 cases come up. So the first item in the staff report, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video and share my screen. I sent this along just prior to the meeting, but we'll also have it here so you can follow along more easily. Can you all see the staff report there on screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Historic
For me, it's
Preservation
a little
Month.
small. I don't know if you could enlarge it just by a couple
I
percent.
absolutely can. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. If my computer will. There we go.
That's better. Thank you.
So probably the big thing is Lily Wilcock, one of our other planners, who is also her primary job responsibility right now, is leading up the comprehensive plan overhaul. She approached me and said, hey, you talked about wanting to do a walking tour of the downtown historic district. And I said, yes, that would be wonderful. And it would get me off of square one. So we found a computer app that has both a mobile platform and a desktop platform. So people can download the app and take a walking tour of the downtown historic district, or they can also look at it on their computer. On that platform, they get a lot more information, architectural details, historical details. The mobile app version is going to be skinnied down to make it more compatible with, walking through downtown, with little 30-second audio entries for each of the sites that we're going to be highlighting. And then there will also be a video version in case somebody wants to watch us walking through downtown and stopping at these sites. We're going to start. Yes.
What, the Hunter Building?
Yeah.
I don't know that name. Is there another?
There really wasn't another name for it in the historic district application, unless somebody wants to throw one out. This was the building owned by Mr. Kraft next to Bohemia.
That little short one, kind of.
Right. So it was the Whitaker Building, right? And
Yeah.
it still
Okay,
says the
all right.
Whitaker Building on the door.
Right.
That explains it to me what it is then. Thank you.
Is that the best name for that? That was Whitaker Jewelry?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think so. I think that's what most people now associate the building with.
Then I will do that as well then. When I was reading through the application, it talked about, it was originally a confectionery and then was Whitaker Jewelry. And it's like, oh, what was the confectionary's name? Okay, we don't know, or I don't know from that. So I'll just call it the Whitaker Building.
Okay.
So here are the 9 sites that we selected for our first edition. This was a combination of sites picked for historic significance and also sites that had some future comprehensive planning significance. The Urbana Free Library, Cohen Building, Princess Theater, Post Office IMC, Crane Alley, those were all selected. One of the reasons was for their historical significance. And then the Rose Bowl, the Whitaker Building, Tre Nopale, which was Satara, those were selected because there are new owners there and they're trying to do new things downtown, and we're planning on interviewing them for little 15, 20-second blurbs to say, what's your vision of downtown? Why did you come downtown? So this initial podcast tour is doing double duty as educational for historic preservation, as well as educational for comprehensive planning. I hope to do a version after this, after I get a little more knowledgeable about the Pocket Sites application, and do a full version of the Downtown Historic District with all of the sites. And the nice thing about this particular application is, it isn't one long half-an-hour video. There are little 30 or 45-second videos of however many sites you put up. And you can add in audio or video files later if you convince an owner to do an interview about their property. You can simply add that in and people can choose to listen to it or skip over it. So I'm kind of excited about this. We're shooting for a May launch, which coincides with Historic Preservation Month, as well as it coincides with some of the comprehensive planning activities. Any questions or comments or suggestions about the podcast tour?
Well, I'm impressed with your idea. I'll comment that.
If you and when you see Lily, please say thank you for helping Marcus get this off the ground. Because the hardest part was, there's 6 million ways to do this, and she was like, "Hey, let's try this one," and I said, "Hey, that looks good." So it's going to be fun. We've already interviewed Charlie Harris, who's one of the owners of the Rose Bowl. Lily did that Tuesday morning. I took some pictures of Jason doing the video. And it's going to be interesting. These videos are going to also be available online, where the city has its other videos in their library. So it isn't going to be siloed off on the historical preservation websites. And we're going to use the city's account to also upload the podcasts and tours that are already online. We're also going to have them available on the general city site. So hopefully they'll get more traffic. So that a lot of good things are going to come out of this project. The other project is I cannibalized last year's proclamation for Historic Preservation Month, and I will look at these projects that we're working on, which I think again will be the Downtown Historic District podcast, but also start planning maybe for a walking tour of Buena Vista Court for later in the year, while the weather's still good, but hopefully COVID will settle down a bit. And maybe we will also video the actual walking tour so that if folks don't feel comfortable coming out live, they can watch it later on, or perhaps we'll do a Facebook Live sort of option where people can be watching it as we're doing it, and then they can ask questions live. Again, this would also hopefully be supported by property owners who have already said they'd be interested in talking with a tour group coming through. Then people who are live or people who are virtual can also talk with the owners. So that's the draft proclamation, and we'll get that out. I'll work on that with Alice later this month so that we can get it maybe at the beginning of May rather than later in the month of May, from as I was able to time it last year. And that moves us into historic property activities. This is where we talked about, cases that have come forward. I'm starting off here with new or updated entries, and then we'll move down into status quo or unchanged entries. Starting off with Mr. Fell's certificate of appropriateness and certificate of economic hardship for window replacement at 2 Buena Vista Court. All of the windows have been replaced except for the basement egress window. That's waiting on, I think, the exterior stucco repair. So hopefully this will be moving along and be fully completed later this year. Back in January, HPC heard and granted a certificate of appropriateness to Joan Price to repair or replace an exterior window. This was considered a major work. That COA was granted. I checked with Kat Trotter, who's the case manager, and she's going to check in with Joan Price. A building permit has not been pulled as of this time. That's not uncommon, but I'm going to try and keep a little tighter track on these things. One of the things as a staff person that I find frustrating is sometimes we spend a lot of time helping people get these certificates through, and then they miss the deadline. These certificates are only good for a year. And if a building permit isn't pulled, that certificate expires. And it might be sometimes that if people were prompted a little bit, they would get at least the building permit pulled before that certificate expires. And, then all of our time and work will be better utilized. Moving on to Chateau Normand at 1404 South Lincoln Avenue. I contacted the property manager there after being directed to do so by Pierre Moulin, and they removed the signboards back in February, and they said that they would remove the posts when weather allowed because it was pretty cold back in February. I think last year when I drove by, the posts were still up, so I'm going to bug the property manager and say, hey, it's kind of warmed up a bit, so could you get out in the next week or so to pull those posts? I did give Pierre the option to apply for a certificate of appropriateness to install a property rental or exchange sign that could be installed on the house, or they could also install one in the yard. Gave him the information that he needed. He is not elected to avail himself of that. I'm not going to push him and prod him and bug him about it. It's available for him, so I'm going to consider this zoning compliance resolved when those posts get pulled.
Can I ask a question about
Absolutely.
the rental signs? Is there, so if the property owner wants any kind of a for rent sign, is there an appropriate, so they have to ask for a certificate to do it?
Correct.
And is it it's a major one? So we'd have to look at it as a commission?
I am going to double check. I'm pretty sure that.
And do we have because there's quite a few rental properties. Do we have a standard for, we want them on the building, we want them freestanding but no larger than something, or
Well, so question number one is signs and interpretive displays that are permanent are considered a major work. So they would have to come to the full commission. Looking at the sign ordinance, a property exchange sign.
What's that mean, that property exchange?
So property rental, sale, or exchange sign.
Okay.
So that's
right.
like for sale, for rent, or
Yep.
for
Okay.
exchange, like I'll swap you a week.
Yep.
It's kind of an odd
Okay.
term. In the B3 district, a property rental sign is allowed to be let's see. I think, well, I'm going to have to double check on the zoning here. I'm fairly certain that this is R7, University Residential. And if it is, the area of the sign can be 10 square feet, according to the zoning ordinance. It's not different for a historic property, and it can be 10 foot tall. Has to be at least 10 feet back from the curb line, but on the private property. Back when we first talked about this, I was kind of mistakenly under the assumption that the commission would prefer to have it out in the yard rather than on the building, if I remember correctly, which I might not. But I was surprised that the overwhelming feeling was the other way around, that folks would rather have it be on the building wall rather than out in the yard. So I'm completely happy to throw any of that out. And if you all want to discuss it and tell me, hey, Marcus, in general, we would rather see a sign on the building rather than in the yard, that would help me guide future applicants to say, yes, you have to apply for it. And by the way, the commission has expressed a preference for wall signs over yard signs or vice versa.
And I don't even remember that discussion, but
That's,
there's a lot I don't remember. Yeah.
and if you want me to check into it, I can listen to the minutes.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, we don't have to.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about it at this very moment, you know, a building versus yard, but anybody else?
Yeah, I prefer yard. I think it can be too overwhelming to have a big sign on a building. I think it takes away from the integrity and interest of a building.
That makes some sense to me.
I think so too. I think when Zeta Tau Alpha Sorority came up, there were 3 signs out in the front yard, and they were outdated, some of them. So I think that was kind of where that came about.
And so the interesting, or the one explanation for the 3 signs is that 2 of them were considered quote unquote development signs. So coming soon, and those are an exempt type of sign because the city realizes they're time constrained. They're supposed to come down, I think, within 20 days or 15 days of when the property is done being developed. They hadn't pulled them, so you know they were out of compliance simply because they were no longer an exempted or permitted sign because the property was built. That's why there were 3, and then he took the 2 down and could have kept one of those signs up as a property exchange sign, but it would have needed to have been smaller. They just elected to take all 3 of them down. So I've got Alice and Kim down as preferring yard signs. Does anybody else want to weigh in?
And I'll go with yard. I'll go with yard
Okay.
too.
Okay.
I don't have any particular, I mean, it's kind of case by case basis, but
Okay.
so I'll just go in as a abstain.
Absolutely. And, you know, every one of these cases still will come to you all, and, you know, it will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
It'd be nice to let the applicant or the property owner know if we do have a preference, instead of them getting their idea that they really want to sign on the building, and then we come along and say, well, we kind of don't like that. It'd be nice if they knew that, I think.
Sure. Does anybody else want to weigh in?
If it matters, yeah.
I think I like yard sign too, as long as it's not, you know, ostentatious. I'd rather see it in the yard than on the building myself.
Okey doke.
And while we're talking about this, at the Royer House on Oregon and Busey, a couple years ago, they put up, it was before Chris Ank bought it, but they put up a sign at, I think it had a name for the place. Anyway, they just did it. And I think I complained and the city got into it. And my recollection, now it's been a while since I've been there, but my recollection is the posts are still there. But
I believe that the posts, I think, were still there while they were doing the work, and I was working on them to get them removed. If you would like me to attempt to step up that reuse or removal sort of thing, we could do that, especially.
I think if we're going to pick on the chateau, we probably ought to not let somebody else get away with the same thing.
I concur.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe we could talk to Chris about if he has any intentions for those posts, and if they might be far enough apart that you'd end up with a bigger sign than 10 square feet. Mm-hmm. So maybe those posts are just not appropriate at all. I don't really know. Yeah.
And I will share with you that sign management is hard.
Yeah.
We only deal with it on a complaint basis, just
Yeah.
from the logistics of it. And the signs on the historic properties become doubly complicated because they're essentially in violation of two parts of the zoning ordinance. They might be too large, or if they're not too large, if they didn't come and ask for a certificate of appropriateness before they put them up, then they're in violation of that. So I'm going to leave that statement there and move on to the next item. If something
Okay.
needs taken care of, please let me know.
Okay.
And that takes us to 502 and 504 West Elm Street, and I'm working on remembering the names and numbers. 502 West Elm is the Sutton House, and 504 West Elm is the Freeman House. Cool, okay. So I've been in contact with Jonah. He's asked for some guidance about railings. I've been working with Nick Hansen, the building official for the city. He shared with me, repairing existing railings or existing parts of a building need to meet the property maintenance code, which is one code. Installing new things like new railings or renovating steps up the code requirements and then makes those things need to meet building code, which is like today's building code and is much more stringent. So if Jonah elected to simply repair the existing stair railings, then that would only need to meet the property maintenance code. If he wanted to add new porch railings at 502, the Freeman House, the Sutton House, then that would need to meet the building code requirements. And that's, they have to pull a building permit and all that stuff. Administratively, we've determined that adding or replacing the stair railings would be considered a minor work because it's small, it's much less visually impactful as a kind of a vertical element coming off of the stairs versus adding a new porch railing, which is much more visible, kind of a horizontal element, would be considered a major work, especially because you're adding one, you're not replacing one. The stair railings would be, in this case, replacing a stair railing that's already there, but there weren't stair railings there before. But because it's such a small element and vertical and a required safety thing, we've determined that it would be a minor work, so we would handle it in-house. Alice as the chair and myself as the designee of the zoning administrator. I'm hoping to get an application out of Jonah within the next couple of weeks. I'm personally hoping that he chooses to simply replace the stair railings and not do the porch railing. But if he wants to do the porch railing, absolutely, we will be then bringing that case to the Historic Preservation Commission to review the design. We are currently coaxing him to try and replicate the wood railing style that is already on the 504, sorry about that, the 504 Freeman House as the new stair railings. And if he chooses to add a porch railing at the Sutton House, that he would mimic that same wooden style. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of that for you real quick.
Marcus, while you're doing that, could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Do we know if there are historical pictures that show that there ever were railings and what those might have looked like.
I have a photograph of the Sutton House, probably from the 60s. I mean, not terribly historic or anything. And there's no sign of railings
Mhm.
on the porch.
Thanks, Alice.
Correct.
Yeah.
So here is a little snip of both the Freeman and the Sutton House. Here is, without going up and digging into it, it's hard to tell when this railing, how old it is. It could have been put on any time in the 20th century. These could be, sections from your standard sort of home improvement store. I believe they're wood. When I kind of poked at them and when I was taking pictures, they appeared to be wood. So my suggestion to Jonah would be to replicate this on the stair railings. And if you chose to do one at the Freeman House, to basically put up something similar, not that it would be identical to the bric-a-brac or whatever it is called at the Freeman House, but at least it would tie it to the neighboring house as a design element and it wouldn't stick out. Adding a new porch railing, though, that would come to you as a major work, so you could weigh in and help him decide. Preferably, I'd like to have him come with a design that is going to pass Preservation Commission muster, but that's only for convenience sake. If discussion turns out that whatever design he does come with doesn't meet with your approval, hopefully then you would be able to send him back with some suggestions and then he could pick something and either you could have him come back and show you the final design, or you could say, we approve a design that meets what we're telling you we want it to look like tonight. And then we could administratively handle it from there. So those are the current staff thoughts with some input from Alice. I would be glad to hear any suggestions or comments or do with it what you will, Marcus, sort of direction.
Any questions or comments?
I have a couple of comments. One is on the Freeman House. Those railings, even if there was a railing at some point, those railings definitely look like they're taller than they would have been if there were railings on the house. I know that when we rebuilt our front porch, we got the city to sign off on the 24-inch historical height rather than going with a 36-inch because it's a single family owner occupied. And I know that probably wouldn't be the case there. Also, is the Sutton House, isn't it like 36 inches off grade requires? And the Sutton House looks closer to the ground than that to me.
Right. So this is where it gets super, and I'm going to say complicated, not complex. It's complicated because Jonah is dealing with insurance company requirements. Then there is the property maintenance code requirements for when he's replacing something on an existing building. And then there's building code requirements if he's adding something new. So Nick Hansen is willing to work with me and the HPC to accommodate historic aspects of things. But if something is new, normally that would trigger the building code, which is probably where that 36-inch tall railing comes in, but also the triggers of minimum heights that trigger having railings. And I actually went out there and measured the grade to the porches and counted the steps, because number of steps also figures in. And I'm going to sit down with Nick and say, okay, here's what's here now. What's going to trigger, having a railing versus having no railing. And, at this point, because, say, the Freeman House is existing, if the insurance company doesn't require a railing, the city would not require a railing because there is not a railing there now. That's the existing building exemption. If the insurance company did require a railing, which I get the impression from Jonah that it didn't, then he would have to put up a railing, and that railing would trigger building code standard, which might be that 36. In which case, if HPC said, whoa, that's going to look ugly and out of place, then Nick might allow some shorter version with the reasoning being it's a registered landmark, etc. But I'm not going to dig too much into that until Jonah comes back to me and says, I want to put in a porch railing. If he says, I don't want to put in a porch railing, then I'm not going to waste a bunch of city and commission time figuring out the 27 options that he can do. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But keep in the back of your mind what kind of designs or thoughts if this does come up, and I'll give you, plenty of notice. When he submits a certificate, I will be notifying you, hey, this application came in.
Yeah, and people should take a look at the Secretary's standards, which are at the back of our historic preservation ordinance, because several things come to mind for me. You're not supposed to create a false sense of time. So we should keep that one in particular in mind, I think, if there's a new railing that goes up on the porch.
I would almost think on the Sutton House that we might ask him to match that gingerbread up above if he has to have a railing, something that might look kind of like that gingerbread if that's original.
Is that
or
the lower,
that detail work over the entranceway there.
did I get the name
just-
wrong again? Is that the Freeman House or the Sutton House?
Sutton,
Oh,
the
so
brick
it's
one.
504 is Sutton. Man,
No, 504 is Freeman.
right, I got the numbers wrong.
Well,
Okay.
your email is, this email that we're looking at with the pictures is right. 502 Sutton and 504 Freeman.
Okay, so, okay. So were you talking about the Freeman House or the Sutton House?
Sutton.
Okay, so this one up here with the big columns.
No, that's Freeman. You have them backwards in the pictures.
Okay, all right. That's right, because.
But in the text, it's right up above.
Okay, cool, okay. Thank you.
So I wanted to comment on what Gina said about the, trying to match that bric-a-brac. Is that exactly the false sense of time you're talking about, Alice, though?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tricky situation. I would think that if they do want to put on a railing all around the porch, that we could stylize some element of the historic trim. And that would be respectful to the original design without creating a false sense of time. So you might still have, some balusters on a railing, but they just maybe wouldn't be as intricate as what the entrance bay on the porch is, maybe. Because there's so many elements that, anybody could take and, turn those into part of the railing.
That's a really good strategy where, like, because there's less detail, that if you went up and looked at it carefully, you would never mistake the addition for an original component.
Yeah.
And yet it's not about contrast. I mean, the main issue is to reduce the contrast between and something new and the original.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I'd rather see that than have them try to match what's on the Freeman House, which is
Okay.
not particularly pleasing.
Understood. Okay, so attempt to do something that is complementary, incorporates elements of its own railing elements as opposed to trying to match the neighbor.
You know, its own architectural elements. I wouldn't say railing elements since there's not a railing.
Right, okay,
Yep.
architectural elements, yes, okay.
Okay.
And is there a name for this particular bit up here along the top?
Is it a filigree? What is that stuff?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
The little
The top of the
spindles.
porch?
That kind of ladder form, you're thinking about that horizontal
Yeah.
ladder
Yeah.
Right.
element.
That kind of gingerbready looking thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I bet that there's a lot of different styles like that fall under the gingerbread heading.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That there isn't just one type of gingerbread. I know that because I have a little bit of the original gingerbread that was up like a veranda around my house. And I know that it's available, and there were lists of all the choices that you could pick. So,
Okay. Well, I think I've got enough information to pass on to Jonah, and I'm going to give him a call tomorrow and say, hey, have you made a decision about railings or not? And I will be sure to let you know at next month's meeting, but also let you know in between if a application does come in from him. Let's see. And that is the end of the updated entries. We did receive recently an application from Henry Strelo at 8 Buena Vista Court. He was the one that had repaired his original windows there in that bungalow, and he had gotten a certificate of appropriateness to repair the exterior stucco of the house. He would now like to repair the porch. There's three parts of that. There is a wooden access ramp that was built to access the front porch. It actually ran up from the ground along the west side of the house and covered up the front concrete steps as it turned into the porch. So he does not need an access ramp. It detracts from the character of the house, so he would like to remove that. It's not original. He would also like to replace the current concrete steps, which are falling away from the house and broken. And I'm fairly certain they're non-original because they have these brick sidewalls on them that don't match anything on the rest of the house. So he would like to replace those concrete steps and remove the brick sidewalls and basically have, you know, open-ended concrete steps if that meets building code. And then finally, he wants to repair the porch exterior stucco and repair the window screens and install an exterior door in the porch, between the porch and the outside. I haven't forwarded this on to Alice yet, so I will tentatively say that I believe all three activities would be considered minor works under the remove access ramps item, the all other exterior maintenance and repairs items, and the doors item. And so I'll be working with Alice on that, and I'll be forwarding on the application to you all to take a look at. I also have a bunch of pictures that I took that I will share a Google Drive link with you in case you're interested in looking at them. If Alice determines that one of these things would be a major work, then we would be bringing that portion of it to you folks for your review at next month's meeting.
And number 8, is that the front on the west side,
On
street
the
front?
east side.
East side, okay. All right.
The kind of pinkish looking
Okay.
one as opposed to the smooth concrete sided one with
Okay.
the pretty awnings.
It's on the
Um,
Elm Street side, right?
Correct.
Elm, yeah.
Their numbering starts southwest, goes north and loops around and comes to southeast.
Right.
So 1 through 8. Yeah.
And Henry is one of the folks who is willing to let folks tour or, talk to them if we did a walking tour later on. Not that I would allow that to color my determination for him.
Yeah.
He says with a smile that you can't see. Okay, old entries, no status change. Andrew Fell's exterior plaster repair on number 2, Buena Vista Court. That's on hold still until all of the interior renovations are done. In an email from Andrew, he mentioned there's been quite a bit of work going on. Let's see. He's meeting with his stucco repair person this Saturday. And for the porch roof, that's in progress. The framing for the porch roof was completed this morning, and the stucco guy will encapsulate what's necessary for the original look. The roofing panels are colored, and he's having them powder coated in the approved color. So sounds like things are moving along there. Janet Moore, all of her work is done except for the exterior stucco repair. She was told by her person that it should cure for the winter before it gets painted later this year. Similar to Henry Strelow's, there's still quite a bit more work that needs done there, and it's in progress. Chris Enck, his pergola roof repair, that work has been completed. The Ricker House, I am still attempting to make second contact with those owners to get them to submit a retroactive, if you will, certificate of appropriateness for them having replaced their asphalt shingles on their roof.
On the Royer House, Chris Enck's place.
Yes.
What the pergola, is that the attached porch on the east side are you talking about, or is that
Yes.
a separate? Okay, it's not a separate structure in the backyard somewhere. Okay.
Correct. Right.
All right.
It was the east
That
porch.
open
Yeah.
area there. Yeah.
They
Okay.
took off the corrugated fiberglass sheeting off of it and refinished the wood. And I heartily encourage anybody that has the opportunity to swing by, walk around on the sidewalk and take a look at it, because they did a really awesome job on it. So yeah.
Marcus,
Really,
oh, yeah,
nope, that was it.
one tiny question. You had mentioned earlier or reminded us that there's a 1-year frame for the certificate of appropriateness. Is that an issue for the first item in that list, since we're past that? Or
No, because it's just
Because
they
it's
have to
minor?
pull a building permit
yeah, okay,
within that year.
got it. Okay, I got it.
Yeah,
Thank you very
and-
much. Okay,
Sure.
thank you for clarifying that.
So that's all I have really for my staff report. If anybody has any questions or comments or direction, I'd be glad to hear it.
Anyone?
I have one question.
Yep.
Sure.
Alice, did I just talk over you? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Well, could I go back all the way to the beginning when we talk about the historic walking tour?
Yes.
Is there going to be an attempt to include the names of the businesses that were once part of those places?
Yeah.
Or in those places? Okay.
Yeah, so the 30-second blurb allows about 3 sentences, and that'll probably be, you know, when it was built, who the original tenant was, maybe what style it is, and then who the current tenant is. Because
Okay.
a lot of this is to attempt to get people to come downtown to come back to these places. And
I was
then-
just, yeah, I was just running through some of, I would like, Tres Nopales is, you know, been a lot of people at that place, one of whom, if I'm not mistaken, was Earl Carson, who used to own the candy store back, yeah. He used to live in my house. So
Okay.
so I looked up, I just got done looking up photos of Carson's Candy on Ray Street. I think it's all part of that one, you know, where everything is connected. And of course the embassy and all that stuff. So,
Well, if anybody has any photos they want to share, I'm attempting to, I won't say clean up, but at least organize our photo library. If you want to share photos with me, I would be glad to take them as long as the file name or something tells me the address. And that way I can put it in with all of the other photos of that same address.
okay.
That would be awesome.
Okay. Thank you.
Marcus, I almost hate to ask, but can you comment on the Landmark Hotel and if is it still going to be something or?
I know absolutely nothing about it except a couple of things were, there was a question about there might still be an active meter, electric meter there. So somebody was checking into that. And that's really all I've heard. Occasionally I will ask Lori, hey, Lori, how's that going? And she'll tell me they're still working out things. When I asked about the completely self-serving thing of, hey, they are going to come to HPC when they have designs, right? And she said, yep, they know all that. They know that, you know, they've got to meet National Register, Secretary of Interior requirements. Because I'm pretty sure they're using federal tax credits and stuff. But right now, I know next to nothing.
Okay, couldn't resist.
Nope, I appreciate you asking. And I appreciate that, especially because now I can go back to Lori and economic development folks and say, hey, Chair and the commission asked, you know, what the status is.
Yeah, it looks so bad still. I'd go sweep the parking lot or something if they'd let me.
Well, what I think about is the number of no longer living trees in the tree islands in the parking lots.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know some of those lots are private and some of them are city lots, and I can't bring myself to pester the private lot owned ones when the city owned lots are in some cases not any better. But time is limited, staff time is limited, and we'll get that hotel going and then we'll get those trees in. Or it'll be part of getting the hotel going. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing there and start sharing here and get back to the agenda. And so that is the end of the staff report. Thank you.
And I think that was an impressive staff report. So thank you for that and all the time that went into it.
Sure. We'll work on getting it out as an actual part of the packet next month.
Okay.
Sounds good. Any questions on the staff report then? Looks like we're set there. So we have no study session, and the last item on the agenda really is just announcements. Does anybody have any announcements or things we need to know about? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Renee,
Second.
seconded by Trent. All those in favor? Oh, no, we just adjourned. We're adjourned.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Be
Good to
well.
see everyone.
7:59 p.m.
Be well. Take care, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Thanks,
Kat.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Kat's hiding from us. We didn't get to see her.
She's lurking. Yeah.
Adjourned at 7:59 p.m. Thank you.